Hi, everyone. I'm Ben Svetkey. I'm a contributing editor at TheWrap, and I'm here today to welcome you to TheWrap's Emmy Award screening of Star Trek Discovery. With me today are actors Sonequa Martin-Green, David Ajala, and executive producer and co-showrunner Michelle Paradis. We're going to be showing you a trailer for Discovery, and then we're going to go into a conversation with our guests. You guys out there in the audience, feel free to participate in the live chat, share your thoughts, and be sure to let us know where you're tuning in from. But first, let's take a look at the trailer.
Once we enter the anomaly, we are going where no one has gone before.
Life is just a blink. It is one heartbeat in the entire lifespan of the universe.
Captain? Captain?
Are you with us?
Today, we seek to understand a threat like none our galaxy has faced before.
What exactly is this anomaly?
We're not certain. Our ship was hit by something.
Together, we will meet this threat to our shared galaxy.
Until we understand the anomaly well enough to predict its path, billions more lives will be.
With so much at stake.
Countless lives, futures.
Once we enter the anomaly, we are going where no one has gone before. Wherever we come from, whatever our experiences,
You got this.
we're all in this together.
I gotta have hope that we'll find a way to stop it.
We cannot let fear define us in this moment.
The future remains uncertain.
But the captain in me knows
Anything is possible.
Ready when you are, Captain.
let's fly.
Okay, welcome back. I'm happy to introduce Sonequa Martin-Green, David Ajala, and Michelle Paradis. I'm going to start out with what's probably an incredibly obvious observation. Discovery seems to me a really interesting addition to the Star Trek franchise. Even though it was originally in its first season planted in extremely classic Star Trek territory, the 10 years before Captain Kirk took over the Enterprise, it's a completely wholly originally concept. It's unlike anything that's come before in Star Trek. Even, the way the ship moves through space is completely new. There's no dilithium crystals. By the way, there's no way to say dilithium crystals without sounding completely geeky, so I'm just going to get through that. But it strikes me as a delicate line to walk, because you're trying to make something wholly new and yet still keep it Star Trek. So it makes me wonder, what were the marching orders? What was the mission of the show as it was being put together? Was it deliberately trying to walk that line, or were you just sort of, here's a show, take off, see what you can do?
I can jump in and answer that. I can't speak for Alex. Alex developed and created the show and brought it to life before I actually came on board. But I can tell you the conversations that we had once I did come on board, halfway through the second season, and then I started running it with him as of the third season. And the thing that he has always talked about, and the thing that we always talk about in the room, is 100% the need to honor the DNA of the original Star Trek, which is the underlying sense of hope and optimism, the diversity in voices on the show, in the stories that we tell, this feeling that that science is a really good thing, that exploration is a good thing, that meeting new individuals is a good thing. and that whatever our obstacles, we can overcome them if we work together. So all of that was part of the original series. And then also there's making Discovery its own iteration of Star Trek, which is also very, very important. We want this to be its own show, but still fit in with that all the things that have come before, not just the original series, but all of the other series that have come up to now. So it's, to your point, it's definitely a balancing act, but one that we are aware of every season that we go into and every episode that we break.
Sonequa, your character in particular, Michael, strikes me as part of that sort of high wire act. In one sense, she's very much part of the canon. I mean, she's Spock's brother. You don't get more canon than that. But on the other side, she's unlike any character that's been in the show before. She's a Federation officer who's been kind of disgraced and goes to prison and comes back. I'm wondering, when you got the role, there didn't seem to be much history for you to grab onto, no other characters in the canon that you could sort of anchor yourself to. And I'm wondering if that was a difficult challenge for you to sort of figure your way through the character.
You know, I have to admit that I didn't feel like I had too much trouble digging in. I really felt like I was grounded by the story I was given. Because it was so specific and so rich, and I appreciated that connective tissue to Spock and to Sarek and Amanda and to Vulcan in general. And so that's really where I started, was with Vulcan culture and with the relationship between me, Burnham, and Spock, and then also that duality of culture between humanity and Vulcanism is really where I started. And I feel like the world opened up to me pretty easily. And that is very much a testament to the writing and to that original vision, because I loved being able to walk the line, right? Because we did have to be old but new at the same time. And you're right, it is a very delicate balance. And you have to be courageous but respectful. You have to fly, but you also have to be, tethered at the same time. So it is such a balancing act. And I feel that Burnham, within the character of Burnham, is a balancing act all the time. And so it's almost like that prevailing theme lived through Burnham.
Were you guys both Star Trek fans, or were you new to the series when you signed on? Did you have to do massive amounts of studying of the original sacred text before you sort of dived in?
I definitely had to do research. I knew all about Star Trek, of course, and it used to be on the TV when I was a kid. But I needed to dig in. I was playing it while I was sleeping and everything. I was like, I need this to like get into me, because it's such a massive, universe.
Yeah. What about you, David? Were you familiar with the show or a fan or?
Yeah, I mean, just in terms of popular culture, Star Trek has been in popular culture for like north of 50 years. So I was always familiar with it. But in terms of being a fan of the franchise, it just wasn't something it was in my peripheral, but it wasn't something that I kind of took to automatically. But then, of course, as fate would have it, here I am speaking with you, Ben, with SMG and Michelle Paradise, now part of this franchise. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful experience. I've learned so much, and it's beyond humbling to be part of a franchise where you know that you're telling stories which are impacting people's lives and inspiring them.
I imagine. I don't know if this is a cool thing to ask actors, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How recognized are you when you can you go to Whole Foods and buy an avocado without like being accosted by hordes of Trekkies taking pictures of you, or are you pretty cool in your daily lives without being recognized?
Well, I love that I'm getting an avocado from Whole Foods.
Or
you're very healthy. Very healthy.
I appreciate that. No, I mean, I wouldn't use the verb accost, honestly. I don't ever feel that way, thankfully, because the fans of Trek, our extended Trek family, they're such a beautiful group of people, you know, such a different group of people, such a vast array of human beings, right? It's like infinite diversity and infinite forms. And I feel that there's such a level of intellect and heart and, you know, loyalty and everything. And we really feed off of that, right? It's very cyclical. At least that's what I believe. And so I love it. It depends on the day though. I don't know how it is for you, David, but it depends on the day. Like some days there's lots of exchanges out in public, and then some days there's none, you know, I guess it all depends.
It is, isn't it? It's a whole mixture. I mean, I kind of have a rule. If someone stares at me 2 seconds too long, I say hello, break the ice, keep it moving. But for the most part, my interactions with fans, admirers of my work or the stuff I've worked on, be it Star Trek or whatever, there's always a certain level of kind of respect and kindness, long may it continue, that I've experienced. But I've been told that there are no fans like Trek fans, and it's true. And,
yeah, I would imagine you're learning that firsthand. Yeah.
Yeah.
David, in my continuing quest to annoy the actors on the show, I'm going to ask you about Grudge, the cat that you share screen time.
I'm here for it. That cat.
I mean, first of all, what is it with Star Trek and cats? I mean, you have a cat. Data has a cat. Nobody ever has a dog. Are dogs extinct in the future, or what's going on with that?
I mean, so I'll let you in on a little story, and I say this because it's quite therapeutic to talk about it. I assumed that when I read the script, season 3, episode 1, that Grudge would be a CGI cat.
Yeah,
they said, you know, humongous cat. I just assumed that it's going to be a CGI cat. So now I arrive on set, and fortunately, I'm okay with cats. I arrived on set, and then I saw that I'm actually going to be working with a Mancoon cat, which was it was a pleasant surprise.
Oh yeah.
I'm happy it's worked out, because that could have been very challenging if I weren't able to just be at ease.
So you've bonded with the cat. Do you guys like hang out at the craft service table?
Bonded. I'll loosely use that. I mean, she's touch and go. As Sonequa knows, she's touch and go, you know. But I don't mind it, because she has a certain energy that just keeps things very spontaneous on set.
Well, I'm sorry, Grudge couldn't be with us on the panel today, but I'm glad to know you guys are getting along.
To be part
Absolutely.
The show, obviously, at one point in the series, it splits into two. Discovery flies off even further into the future, and the Enterprise sort of stays in its timeline. But you guys now have kind of 2 sibling shows. You've got Discovery and you've got Strange New Worlds. And each of them is literally flying in opposite directions. One is your show is this sort of heavily serialized series that's set in a completely new alien universe. And the other is an old-fashioned episodic that's exploring a very, very familiar universe. And to me, it's almost like a science experiment, like which one works better with the audience. And I'm wondering if there's a competition at all. Are you guys casting wary, suspicious glances at each other's sets? Are you aware of the different paths that you guys are taking and how that impacts the franchise?
Yeah, I can I'll speak to the last part. Well, first of all, no, there's absolutely no competition at all. And one of the things to Alex's credit that he has said from the beginning is that each of these shows needs to occupy its own space within the larger universe, because you don't want 2 shows that feel very, very similar. So Discovery and Strange New Worlds, for example, feel very different by design. You know, Discovery is heavily serialized, and when Strange New Worlds came out, I know they worked very hard to make sure that it would be its own distinct thing. And we are aware, as writers and showrunners anyway, all of the shows, we all get together on a pretty regular basis and talk to one another to make sure that that the storylines aren't overlapping in ways that don't make sense for the larger universe. We talk about all of that stuff so that we are aware of those things, because all of us want to make sure that the shows that we help shepherd continue to occupy their own space, but that it all feels of a larger piece that Alex and his team at Secret Hideout kind of oversee. all of them. So, but there's not a competition. We love what they're doing. I mean, we're, fans of their work. So I don't want to speak for you guys, but
no.
You guys go. You talk now.
Please speak.
I'll stop talking.
No, absolutely. And I'm grateful. I'm grateful that it's not that way. It's very much a family. The show family has been fostered and nurtured at this point. And we really feel like, almost like we all met up at grandmama's house, and now we're all just kind of, setting up our own, individual homes. It's going back to that infinite diversity and infinite combinations. It's I love that there is an identity to each iteration, and I think it should be that way. And they can exist. We should exist all at the same time, because every story is going to touch a different group of people in different ways. And whenever I talk about the expansion that's happening in the Trek universe, I talk about how it's exciting to be able to reach different people, other people, more people, because that message of hope is so important.
I guess I'm wondering, both episodics and serialized shows have their individual challenges. I mean, in a serialized show, you have this huge amount of plot and sort of pacing to worry about across a whole season. And with an episodic, you're basically reinventing the wheel every episode. And I'm wondering, from a writer's point of view, which is easier, which is harder?
I'm not quite sure how to answer that, because I've done both, and they both have, as you said, they both have their unique challenges and also wonderful creative opportunities. It's really it's such a cool thing at the beginning of every season of Discovery, for example, to start thinking about, well, what will be our big idea for the season? What are our big themes for the season? Who's our big bad of the season if we have a big bad, or what's the big obstacle? What is Burnham's journey going to be this season, and how does that tie in with it all? Each of our characters, Book and Culber and Stamets, all the characters, Tilly, what are their journeys going to be this season? Really, to get to look at that and to get to look at it over however many episodes we have is a really, really cool thing. And you get to dig really deep into one kind of idea. And then for the episodic, it's really fun because every episode is every episode in Serialized is also what if, but you have a sandbox that you're playing in for the season. On the other side, it's the what if for this particular episode. And of course, you've got characters that you're building around and all of that. But they're very different things, different creative opportunities. And I love, by the way, to go to your earlier question, I love that there are different iterations of Star Trek out there right now, because some people really love serialized storytelling and the episodic isn't quite their thing. And some people love the episodic and some people love both. And I don't know, it seems really like a really cool time to be a fan of Star Trek, that you have all of these options on the table. And
yeah, that is for sure.
Yeah.
Well, what about for acting? I mean, is it easier to develop a character over a long story arc, or is it kind of more fun to, keep track of your character despite shifting storylines or tonal changes and keep that thread through it? Or are they both equally challenging?
I think, I guess it just depends on how you approach the work. I mean, I think there's something to be said about working on a show and starting from episode 1 and being able to track the character's journey through until, the 10th episode, season finale, or the 13th episode, whatever it may be. For me personally, I welcome that challenge and enjoy it, because it just means that I'm able to have the liberty to really take the time incrementally to just explore this character's journey from episode to episode to episode. It works for me. I actually enjoy it. But I do know that when I go and do a movie, it's obviously completely different, because that time is compressed and condensed. I love doing the best of both worlds, in all honesty.
I feel the same way. I agree. It's like a paint. If you think of it like a painting, I like to think of it as a painting sometimes, and it's being able to continue work on a painting, because though you have an open-ended life, because it's an open-ended story, because the episodes are continuing to come out, and you're discovering, there's a lot more room for discovery. You're discovering new things about your character as you go on, and you're having to reshape memories and reshape desires and dreams and fears and whatnot. Whereas a play or a movie, you get to, you have the sort of totality of the character right there, the beginning, middle, and end. And that is a painting in itself, but you do it, and there's still some discoveries along the way, but it's mostly a set thing. So I agree with David. It's equal. It's so much fun. Any medium, all the mediums are fun, in our opinion, right? It's like we'll do it all, but they, there is there's like an almost kinetic kind of energy to television in that way, because you're constantly discovering and rediscovering and recreating new things in the story and in your character.
To add to that point as well, SMG, I think there's also something about when the arc is open-ended, this painting is open-ended, it also means that as an actor, you have to kind of keep a certain level of suppleness, because you can't become too fixated on an idea too soon, because that could evolve. And certainly of the previous season, working with Michelle Paradise, she gives me the information kind of episode by episode, because I don't like to know too much ahead of time. And that kind of puts me in a somewhat vulnerable position, because I have to be completely flexible, but then still commit to certain ideas and decisions. And I think it's the joy of what we get to do as actors.
Yes. That makes total sense. Shifting gears a little bit, back in Next Generation's day, when it first started, Gene Roddenberry was still the creator of Star Trek, was still very much involved in the show. And that used to drive the producers absolutely nuts, because he would come up with these seemingly arbitrary rules about what the Star Trek universe should be. And they usually made drama kind of impossible. That kind of burned off after a while. But I'm kind of wondering, like, who's the great arbitrator of Star Trek in the sky right now? I mean, like, there's, for instance, there's so many timelines that are involved in every iteration of this show. There's just a lot to keep track of. And who tells you, no, this is not what a Star Trek show is or isn't, or this is where, where are the boundaries of the Star Trek universe? Is there a Bible, a Star Trek Bible? Is there one, source of authority?
Yeah, there are a few answers to that question, actually. In terms of like a Bible and canon stuff, we actually have Alex's company, Secret Hideout, also has a team of folks who keep track of all of these things for all of the new iterations. And they're also well-versed in all of the previous iterations of Star Trek. So there are a team of people who will tell us if a particular detail that we have in a story, perhaps it doesn't fit canon, or something happened that we had forgotten about that we need to keep in mind as we're doing whatever thing it is. So there are those sorts of things. In terms of the general feel and the storytelling of any particular Star Trek episode, Alex and his team oversee all of the iterations of Trek on television. And then they have someone like me on each of their shows who runs that particular show. So we're always, I mentioned this a little bit ago, but we're always working to do the best version of our version of Star Trek that we can. We're checking in with Alex, and we're checking in with one another also to make sure that it all feels of a piece. Not in terms of checking our storytelling and the tone of it, but just to make sure we're not overlapping in terms of the stories that we're telling. And ultimately, we all feel that we have a very good sense of what Star Trek is, where the boundaries of Star Trek are fairly wide, and we're all well versed in it. And so, what is Star Trek in general? What makes a Star Trek show and episode? We all, I think, have very good instincts for that. And then there's Alex also and his team who also help keep a check on that. And but generally speaking, it all feels like a very much a collaborative and fluid effort. It doesn't feel like, I don't know, it doesn't feel like anyone ever comes in and I don't know, does kind of what you're describing. I mean, I don't know because I wasn't in those rooms at that
There's
time.
There's nobody measuring like the length of a Vulcan ear and making sure that it's within.
Well, the things that we absolutely need the definitive canon answers on. There's that team of folks to tell us, you know. I don't know if a Vulcan is behaving in this way, it's because of this, or I mean, we would know those things most of the time anyway. But it feels very much like a collaborative process, and we all work very closely with our team of writers. We work very closely with Alex. You know, it feels very much like a community of people who love Star Trek and who love the particular version of Star Trek that they're doing. And we all, I don't know, are excited to come into work every day and do that. I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it totally does. I'm just curious if there's been instances where writers have wanted to go into directions that they've been sort of peeled back from. Or is everybody just sort of rowing in the same way? And
well, I think any writer's room, not just a Star Trek version writer's room, but any writer's room, the writers on staff will pitch into all sorts of different areas, and you know, you blue sky those things, and then you find your way to the story that feels right for your show. So I think that's just part of the process, regardless. Not unique to Star Trek, a Star Trek show. But yes, we also certainly have a sense of what is Star Trek, what are the kinds of stories that that Discovery specifically would tell, because the kind of stories we might tell are going to be different than the kinds of stories that Strange New Worlds or Picard or Lower Decks or anything like that would, or Prodigy would tell, but it all has to fit within the Star Trek universe. And I think we all have a very good sense of what is the basic underlying DNA of what makes a Star Trek show.
I know also from Next Generation days that the producers and writers would often get tons of furious letters from fans complaining about, like, you shot a Photon torpedo through the wrong Jeffries tube, how dare you, burn in hell, that kind of thing. And I'm wondering if you guys are still generating that sort of obsessive compulsive fan feedback, or is the show so new that it kind of disarms that? It's like nobody knows what tube the torpedo goes out of anymore. Have you saved yourself that horror, or are you still hearing back from these people?
No, I mean, Sonequa and David said it just a moment ago. The folks who love our fans of Star Trek are very, very passionate, and we love that. We love that about them. We love their passion. I love that someone knows which tube the torpedo should come out from, or that you know, a certain character in this episode of TNG did this, and then therefore this thing feels a little bit off. That kind of passion is wonderful, and that's that. By the way, because of that, that is in part, and not also because we have 60 plus years of canon, but that's part of why we have a team of people to really track the minutia of the canon stuff. It's why we have two scientists that we partner with on this show, Aaron McDonald and Mohammed Noor, who are both PhDs and who help us with the science-y stuff, so that we can make sure that if our heroes are doing something in space that needs science-y things around it, which is pretty much every episode all the time, Erin has checked the math for us. She's helped us with the language of that, so that people are watching and feeling that they're having that there's been care and thought and so much real world I don't know, math and stuff put into it, because we know that people pay attention. And, you know, and then some people are happy about that and some people aren't. And
that's kind of a cool job, though. Scientists fact-checking Star Trek on a weekly basis. That's, I did not know that exists. That's interesting.
Yeah, she's an astrophysicist, so that's fortunate.
But that must be kind of inconvenient at times when you want to do stuff that's just not within the realm of physically possible, and you sort of
She's great, and Mohammed Noor is a biologist and over at Duke. And what's wonderful about working with both of them is that they are both super creative, and we will tell them, here's a story that we want to do, but how do we make this happen? How do we make it realistic in the futuristic world that we're living in? And they help us find a way to do that, which is fantastic.
It's very cool that you guys are even paying attention to that. I think
Yes.
that's kind of really interesting.
Absolutely.
One of the other things that's been so unique about the show, even in the Star Trek universe, is the pains you guys have taken to expand the representation and update the sensibilities of the series for the 21st century. The first gay couple on Star Trek, I believe, is on Discovery. The first non-binary character, the first character in a wheelchair or hover chair. Although, if we want to get geeky again, I would think Captain Pike probably predates that by about 50 or 60 years. But still, I'm assuming most fans have been completely on board with this. Or are there still Neanderthal Trekkies out there who've been giving you a hard time about this? Or, I mean, and how did that come about? How did you guys decide that you wanted to make the show something that expanded how people thought of representation on Star Trek?
Well, again, that's what Gene Roddenberry did back with the original series in terms of his original casting. And that feels like it's something that is baked into the DNA of what any Star Trek show is. So that's, I can't speak for the conversations that Alex would have had back in the day when the show was first starting up. But again, when I came on board, that was very much part of the conversation, is how can we have a wonderfully diverse cast right now. How can we continue to expand that? And it's a conversation that we have every episode, every season. We're always looking for ways to do that. It feels like that's one of the things that Star Trek is about. It's one of the things that television can and should do, and it's a very powerful thing for people to be able to see themselves represented. And for far too long, that hasn't been the case. And I just from the writing side, and I would love Sonequa and David to speak about what that is from the acting side. But from our side, it feels like a huge responsibility to be writing characters and putting stories on television that millions of people will see. And it's a privilege to be able to do that, and it is a responsibility that we take very seriously. And to answer your earlier question, if someone has a problem with that, then this isn't the show for them. Just to be perfectly blunt about it, because it's baked into what Star Trek does, and that's something that we think is really important that we're going to continue to do.
Yeah, I think in shining the light on that, which it's very much the heart and soul and essence of Trek, that innovation, that responsibility to be a mirror to the society that it's in. Every iteration has done that in so many ways. And, I think every one of us in this company wholeheartedly agrees with what Michelle just eloquently said. We take the responsibility very seriously. And there are people that are resistant. There have been people that have been resistant. I certainly came across a lot of that resistance in the beginning. There were people that didn't like that there was going to be a Black woman, leading Trek for the first time. And, but they proclaim to love Trek, and that's antithetical.
It's kind of a contradiction.
Exactly. Exactly.
This is the show that introduced the first racial kiss in television history.
It's kind of nonsensical, right? But at the same time, I know for me, I love that. If it allows you, if it encourages you to confront yourself, if it brings something to the light within you, then let's hope that you open up. Let's hope that you change. Let's hope that some paradigms shift, inside of you. And that's also the great responsibility of story in general, in my opinion, and then especially ours. So I love it. I also know stories of people that have changed. Their beliefs and their perspectives have changed because of Trek and because of Discovery.
That's massive.
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
That's what it's all about, right? It's like, what an honor to be a part of that.
That's the grand tradition of the show, really. That's what it's all about. I'm going to wrap up with one last question here, which is that planet Earth here in the 21st century is having, I would say it's fair to say, kind of a rough time of it. And I'm wondering if you guys are as optimistic about mankind's future as the show is. How close do you think you're coming to predicting the fate of the human race from, in 300 years or 600 years? Do you think you guys have nailed the future, or is it still just a TV show?
That's massive, Ben. Where do we start? How much time do we have?
You've got 30 seconds each.
Okay. Well, I'll say this from macro to micro. One thing I really love about Star Trek, Starfleet, is specifically you have a group of individuals who are different, whose differences are celebrated, who are encouraged to be innovative, who are encouraged to be the best versions of themselves, who I think are given a safe platform to fail, try again, and then succeed. So far as I have breath in my body, that's what I'm going to endeavor to always do. You can't change the world, but you can change someone's world. And as long as I'm doing that, I feel more than enough.
I feel like the picture of a future like this is the thing. I think it is the rub, right? Is just being able to present the possibility, and the nooks and crannies of it, the tidbits, the details, the difficulties of it, the challenges and the victories. I think the presentation of this reality, this sort of utopian future, is enough, right? Because that visualization, hopefully, prayerfully, will lead to actualization.
I think one of the wonderful things about Star Trek, and again, this goes, I keep referencing back to the original series, but they reflected things that were happening in the world of its time, and every version of Trek has done to that to some degree, and we do that as well, reflecting in a sci-fi way some things that are happening today. So I think there's the world of today, and then there's the world that we could be tomorrow. And I think that's one of the wonderful things about this iteration and the other iterations of Star Trek, is looking at what the world could be and the optimism of what the world could be. So I don't know, am I optimistic? I suppose that depends on the day and what's happening in the world that day. But I really want to believe that we have it in us to be the kind of people that we see in these shows, and that as a species we have it in us to be as good as we can be, and as good as the different versions, including Discovery, of Star Trek show as we can be. So we just need to decide to get there, and as David said, one person at a time, and as Sonequa said, the optimism of that. And I don't know, we'll see. Hope so.
Amen. Paradise. Click, 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 click.
Let's talk about love.
On that kumbaya moment, I want to thank you all for joining us, and for everybody out there, if you want to know more about upcoming wrap screenings and get a bunch more exclusive content, you can become a member of Wrap Pro. There's a free trial you can take advantage of. And for everybody else, there's anybody looking for screening info, including shows that you may have missed, just visit TheWrap.com and click on the events tab in the main nav menu.